Hey, welcome back, everybody. Of course, you know me. My name is Dr. Keith McNally. This is the Question Guy podcast. I want to get this right. I'm here with Polly Latovsky.
You did a good job.
Hey, I love it. And your additional words are My Word Publishing. And so you are in the book publishing space a little bit.
I am now. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But today we're going to tease into that. But today
Yeah.
we're going to talk about a journey that you went on. And I love it because I wrote a book called Walking the Path, A Leader's Journey. And so I know all about that, at least in the fictional sense, but I am totally envious because you actually did it. Dang on it. You
Yes, I did
actually,
the
you
physical
actually,
naiveness. Yes, I did that.
you actually walked across the globe. And so we're going to talk about that story today and maybe a little bit more, but I'm never going to stop saying envious. But my trek in 2025 is only across the Appalachian Trail. So you trump me regardless of whatever else I do in life. Let's get into this conversation. How did it start?
Okay. What I like to say to people facetiously and kiddingly, of course, is when they do something like the Appalachian Trail. Oh, that's cute. That's precious. That's adorable. Uh, but seriously, very different. And I probably would not do the Appalachian Trail, so seriously, congratulations.
I haven't done it yet.
Okay, okay. So I was 12 years old when this idea got stuck in my head that I want to go walk around the world. It was, I grew up in that era of the feral child, so people would fall out the door and hear your neighbor's door slam, and you're like, playtime, and you run outside and you make up games and climb trees and get into trouble and take your bikes down alleys and around corners and down the next block, and it was that life. And I think, as I now look back on that, what a gift that was, and what an education. There's certainly more to education than sitting in your desk and memorizing dates. And I think that gave me a great education. And I think I took that with me for the rest of my life. Just the running outside, and you have to learn how to get along, and you have to learn how to, you know, solve problems and solve fights and this kind of thing. But one day when I was 12, I started reading the paper one summer. Must have been the summer of 74. I was 12 years old. Started reading the Minneapolis Star and Tribune. And I was such a grown up, I'd go scoop up that Minneapolis Star and Tribune and sit at the breakfast table and go through it. And one day I see the story of a man walking around the world. And the photo is him walking down an empty road, and he is pulling a baby buggy or some kind of carriage behind him. And the caption reads, David Kunst walking down Highway 6 in Colorado on his way home to Minnesota to become the first man to walk around the world. I'm like, say what? It's like,
Wow.
I didn't know you were allowed to think of such a thing if you were from Minnesota. And
Or anywhere for that matter.
oh, I remember being so fascinated when a friend of mine at school went to Iowa for spring break. It's like, you went to Iowa? What's it like there? I swear to God, I was so envious. So when I see this guy walking around the world, I'm like, well, I could do that. That's how I want to go see the world someday. You know what I did is I dropped everything. I went outside and I walked around the house for 3 hours. I walked around the house like, okay, I got this down.
Did you
I can
expect to
walk
get
around the house.
anywhere?
Okay, next stop, the world. So that's what I did. I'm like, okay, I can do it. Um, so I just had that idea stuck in my head that I wanted to go do that someday. And it really did stick in my head. Certainly as kids, you get a wild imagination for 3 days a week, maybe 2 weeks at a time. I'm going to be an astronaut, and you're fully into it for a week, and then it dies down, right? That never happened to me with my walk around the world. It certainly ebbed and flowed in the forefront of my mind, but I always wanted to do that walk around the world. Always intrigued me. I think exploration intrigued me. I was also very intrigued with surviving off the sort of skin of your teeth in the human spirit, seeing if I could do it,
Hmm.
and sort of the constant pivots and decision making and winging it with various cultures and languages and trying different foods. That all fascinated me. But at the end of the day, it's probably not going to happen. Come on, that's a pretty big pretty big pill to swallow, right? So it would ebb and flow, but it always stayed there. And then heading into my 30s, I was living in Vail, Colorado, small mountain town, of course, renowned for its ski village. And there was a year living there when a lot of women in my immediate world were being diagnosed with breast cancer. I was like, what is this breast cancer nonsense? And I think I was maybe 33 at the time, 32, something like that. And I thought, oh, well, I got to go to the doctor and get this mammogram thing everyone's talking about. So I go to the doctor and I say, I want one of those mammogram things. And he's like, you don't need to worry about getting breast cancer because it doesn't run on your mother's side of the family. You don't need to worry about it. Oh, well, what do I know? There's a man standing there in a white jacket and a stethoscope around his neck. I'll believe whatever he tells me. So I said, that's fantastic. Thank you. And the women that I worked with, I came back and they said, how was that mammogram? I said, no, didn't need one. I don't have to worry about getting breast cancer. Can't get breast cancer because it doesn't run on my mother's side of the family. And they both let me have it, something good. Of course you can get breast cancer. Who told you that? Every woman is at risk for getting breast cancer. Every woman in the world, even if it's running your family, not running your family, etc. Of course you can get breast cancer. Well, they let me have it. And I remember walking home that night, 10 o'clock at night, walking down this recreation trail, thinking about the day as you do. And I remember exactly where I was when I had that light bulb moment. And I know we've all had that light bulb moment before when it's like, bingo, that's what I'll do that walk for that I've always wanted to do. Just all the pieces were coming together. And this breast cancer cause was something that's not just in the big cities of America. It's in the small nooks and crannies and villages and hamlets of the world. It's everywhere. Oh my goodness, I remember my head was spinning on that walk home that night, asking all the questions. Can I do it? Could I really do it? Come on, I know I've been thinking about this for a long time, but could I walk 15 miles a day every day? And what about my safety? How do I take care of myself? How do I speak the languages? How about health? And how does that work? And how do I get across the borders? And what countries can I get through? And what route should I take? And how do I get the money to do it? I'm working at a front desk for $10 an hour. How do I get any money to do this? And my head started spinning that night on my 2-mile walk home, and I started planning my global walk for breast cancer. That's the beginning.
Too many questions.
Should I keep going? Should I just launch?
Because there are no answers. You are in a period of human history where, one, and just based on what you told me, a professional doctor, male,
Yeah.
was telling you one thing, your colleagues were telling you something else, no clear indication of who's telling the truth, not to discount, modern medicine at all, but they're not always 100% accurate with their diagnoses. But that's another conversation altogether. $10 an hour doesn't get you very far. Even, I don't care where you are in human history, not going to get you very far. And you mentioned nothing about wanting to have somebody tag along with you. You were doing this on your own.
Well, who are you going to talk into that? You know what I mean? It turns out I did have some people fall in my lap saying, oh, that sounds like fun. I'll go with you. That's a lot to ask of, two people living together 24/7 who have never met, essentially. So that never worked. It never worked. And I did have to figure out a way to go on my own. I do remember once I really started planning it, and I didn't say it out loud to anyone because I knew once I said it out loud, I had to do it. Now, who's going to hold me to it? Next, nobody's going to hold me to it if I say it and don't do it. But I guess I am that person once you say it out loud. And I think probably a year went by when I was planning and I was trying to get corporate sponsorships, which, by the way, corporate sponsors don't sponsor one-person events, FYI. Okay, so save yourself. But they might give products or services or something like that. They certainly don't give money. So it took a while for me to figure that out and how to put together a sponsorship package, how to put together a business plan that they want to see, and how to raise money to do it when I have no money. So I had to figure out all those questions. And, I was always in shape. So this wasn't a matter like I was laying on the couch 24/7 and thought, well, if I'm going to walk around the world, I better get up off this couch. I was living in an outside paradise and always walking everywhere. I hadn't owned a car until I got back. So I just walked everywhere. And it was a town in which you could do that, and walked up and down the mountains. So getting in shape, quote unquote, was more a matter of homework. The internet was in its very, very earliest days. We're talking 1997, 1998 when I was doing the planning. And the only places that really had websites were the government. So I could look up, what do I need for a visa? To get into this country and that country. I remember that first night walking home, though, is I'd had maps and world maps. So I spread them out all over the floor. And do you remember on maps when they had the red dot to red dot and then they'd put the mileage in the middle? Do you remember that?
It's called a
So
legend. Yeah.
is that what it's called? But so I spread them all out and going dot to dot all the way around the world, saying, okay, second day, this red dot to that red dot. Third day, this red dot, all the way around the world, right? And those were the days no one had been to China. No one had been to China. Was closed. It's almost like a North Korea thing today, but it was closed. And so that was late 90s again. But I thought for sure once I get there, China will be wide open and they will welcome me and offer me, parties every night. So I planned my initial route to go through China. Well, of course, that didn't happen. So I had to keep, as I was now on the road, I kept changing my route. But when people say to me, how did you choose your route? Do you know there's not that many countries you can actually go through?
I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can get in and out, but you can't go through. And visas a lot. And now I'm going back to the 90s, so go easy on me. So I'm sure they're different now. But I remember trying to get through like the central Stan areas, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, these kinds of things, Turkmenistan. A lot of them you can only get in for 72 hours. And then a lot of times you had to leave the country in order to apply to get another visa for another 3 days. I mean, that it just silly. I mean, that's not going to happen. So I had to keep adjusting where I go and how long I can go. There was Myanmar, okay, who you can get in to the capital city and you can get out, but you can't go through because it's otherwise. And I haven't kept up to what's going on now, but militia-run state, you can't get through. You can't go through it, and there are too many places you can't go and stuff like that. So choosing the path, it took some homework, but at the end of the day, there's really only one or two ways you can go, and therefore, everyone that's biking around the world, with their truck or car, everyone's going the same route, whether it's east-west or west-east, but everyone's going the same route. So you'd run into people. Turns out as a walker, I walk on the side of the road that can see the cars coming at me. I don't walk the same road that the cars are going. So I can't see them coming up behind me. Right. But if you're a biker, you're on the same side as the cars. So I would always come across the bikers who are biking around the world. And there's like this camaraderie, this unspoken word when you see a biker and they see a walker. You just stop, wait for each other. You're like, hey, how are you? Where are you from? And you have this big conversation right in the road. Well, good luck. See you later. And on you carry. That was always a fun thing.
Questions that are just popping up in my head, of course. Did you ever think about quitting? It was just too much.
I get that a lot.
Well, of course, it's the obvious question.
Yeah. I promise, I'm telling the God's honest truth, not once did I ever think of quitting. And there were tough days, crying, bitching, bawling, been a little swearing, but I never thought I better get to, I'll hitchhike to the airport and fly home. And there were tough times.
There had to.
And certainly 9/11 happened when I was in the Muslim world. And
Coincidence. Wow.
yeah, right? So this little, I don't know, I'm half Jewish, okay? Jewish last name. I consider myself the food side of Jewish, but there you go. My father was Jewish. So there I was in a Muslim country, right, during 9/11. I was in Malaysia and, well looked after, but there were also, there's this whole list of mysteries that will never be solved. And one of those mysteries that will never be solved is right after 9/11, like the night of, there were police at my door, my hotel door, and they would be there all night. And there was a convoy essentially following me all day, and then they'd stay the night again outside my door. Now, I'm kind of jumping around, but let me back up a minute and
So I was
explain.
thinking you got a police escort.
I know, that was nice, but I have no idea why. You couldn't talk to each other. But early on in Australia, very early on, this is my third country. I'd walked from Colorado to the Pacific coast, and then down through New Zealand, then up through Australia, and then headed into Southeast Asia. So as I entered into Australia, fourth night in, I met this woman on the side of the road. And at this point, I have a buggy. It's like a baby buggy that's been, revamped into a baby like a backpack on wheels. Okay, they took out the baby sling and created this backpack on wheels, and I had water bottle holders and a horn, and it was really cute. Bob was his name. And so this woman stops me on a corner, very small town, and she says, "Well, what are you doing? You look lost." And I said, "Well, yeah, I was looking for the town park because I thought I'd go sleep in the park that night. Every town has a park." And she heard my funny accent and said, "Well, what are you doing here? Who are you and where are you from?" So I told her, and she said, "Well, I'll be doggone." She said, "Why don't you come home with me? I'm the president of the local Lions Club, and the Lions Clubs have got to get involved with this," because it was a fundraising effort for breast cancer, right? So I go home with Margaret, was her name, and she called, well, I'm getting a hot shower and internet access. Now these things I thought would be,
Possible.
very rare.
Yeah.
She starts calling all of her Lions Club buddies saying, "Meet us at the pub, meet us at the pub," because everything in a small Australian town happens at the pub, right? It's the only thing going on. So everybody meets. If it's a town of 2,000 people, everybody's meeting at the pub. So we meet at the pub, and sure enough, the place is packed. She gets up on a stool and she announces who I am and what I'm doing, and let's show a little Aussie spirit. And she just leaned over and plucked the hat off a guy's head and starts passing this hat around, and people are throwing money into this hat. It lands with the bartender, who counts it out. He announces to the cheering crowd, "We've just raised $332 for the Breast Cancer Network Australia." Yay! And everybody's cheering. And Margaret introduced me to the next town in their Lions Club, and they met me. And that snowballed into an international sponsorship where the Lions Clubs sort of passed me village to village around the world. And so by the time I got to Malaysia and 9/11 happened, I did have this enormous support group. And they did not call the police and tell them to be at my door. So that was one of these mysteries. Now, I'm sure they found out because they can talk to the police and say, "Hey, what's up?" Is there a threat? Should we know about something? But they never told me. So that's why I say this is a mystery that will never be solved. At that point in my journey, I had not been in touch with the American embassies, but from that point on, I was, because of where the world was heading. The Iraq, the Iraq war hadn't started yet, but the war in Afghanistan and then the war in Iraq. So as I kept, going across India and up through Turkey and So from that point on, I was in touch with the American Embassy, but not at that point of 9/11. So who hired these police to be at my door? And there were crowds of people walking with me through Malaysia. Crowds. We're talking 80, 100 people every mile, all the way up through the Malaysian Peninsula. And it was exhausting and fabulous. We did great work for breast cancer, but no one ever told me why the police were there. So that's one of the mysteries. And that continued up through the southern isthmus of Thailand as well, which is a very Muslim area, although Thailand is not. So
Now you're
it's a
tracking, you're telling me parts of the story, your trek in different ways. You've eventually mapped this out. It may be post the event. Is there a map of your actual trek? Is there like a log? Did you keep a log of
I
what?
did. I did.
Is it
Um,
somewhere that the world can see?
I don't think so. I don't think so, no. Well, I guess that there's the beginning of my book, but try to put a world map across a spread, so it's very generic, okay? Across a two-page spread in a book layout.
Okay.
But I certainly talk about it in my book.
Well, what's that? What is that book?
It's called 3 mph, 3 miles per hour, The Adventures of One Woman's Walk Around the World. And, I kept a journal the whole way, every
Okay.
day, stream of consciousness. Wouldn't make sense to anybody else, stream of consciousness writing, right? And when I got back from my walk 5 years later, I started writing a book about it. And I started with my own journal.
Mhm.
So I wrote the whole story out. It's like the end. It's like 1,300 pages long. Like, well, nobody wants a book that's 1,300 pages long, so I cut it in half. It's like now 650 pages. Well, nobody wants a 650-page book, so I kept cutting and cutting and cutting, feeling so disloyal to these great events and stories until someone said to me, "You're not giving up those stories. You can use those for book clubs or radio interviews or something like that, just reusing them elsewhere." Okay, so I felt better about that. And so it landed at 416 pages, and there ain't another damn comma coming out of that book. So, but it took 6 years to do it. And then I handed my manuscript to a
6 years
crooked
to write the
publisher.
book?
6 years, yeah, 5 years to do the walk, 6 years to write the book.
Oh my gosh.
And well, because I was working a couple of jobs, and when I got home, I ain't no trust fund kid, so I'm just working, and with the odd day off or nighttime, I would,
Right.
write it. So 6 years later, then I was as good as it was going to be, and approached, and well, there's more to it than that, but I finally landed on this publisher, and bad decision. Worst, some might say now, the best thing that I ever did. Bad decision as far as a publisher, but that journey brought me into doing what I do now, which is helping authors professionally self-publish their books while they maintain 100% of all their rights and their royalties and final decision making. And that was because of my horrible situation, essentially someone hijacking your life story. It was awful.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's where I got into publishing. When you're signing a publishing contract, it is a one-way street. Okay? You're signing on, and there's no signing off.
Hmm.
Okay? It's not like it's like a marriage. I do. And there's no exit date, you know what I mean? Although I suspect we're going in that direction. I do for 3 years. We'll see how it goes.
That should actually be in the clause, yeah.
Don't you think? Like, let's look at this in 3 years,
That's a really weird contract situation.
especially for a marriage. But anyway, so it's like that with book publishing. You sign on, there's no sign off date. And so people that don't know the industry, which is essentially no one, Okay. You're so excited that someone believes in you and believes in your writing and your story. And, ooh, I have a publisher, I have a publishing deal. You'll sign anything, right? I'm
True.
signing away.
Absolutely true. I'm
Yeah.
one of them. Totally
Are
true.
you? Oh, you poor thing.
No, I'm self-published,
Good, because
but not
that's
through, yeah,
that's
not
what's
through a publisher.
recommended now. But when I was looking at my publishing options, self-publishing was in its very, very infancy and just not good quality.
Right.
And so I was like, ugh, that's just not a good option. And so I went with this hybrid publisher. Okay, don't fall for that. If anyone's listening, if anyone can hear me now, please don't fall for that. But I did. And she broke every clause in the agreement. I go to an attorney, I got to get out of here. And the attorney finally says to me after months, listen, you have a choice here. You can either stay and work things out or you can run for your life and hope she doesn't sue you for breaking the contract. I'm like, I'll take option B, please. I'll run for my life. I didn't own anything. I have a cat. What's she going to do? She can't come after me for anything. And she never did. But I ran for my life. And then I thought, well, what now? What now? So I see this class that's going on not too far away. It's a whole weekend on how to self-publish. I'm like, ugh, all right, I'll go try that.
But wait, your book now belongs to somebody else.
I ran for my life. Essentially, I broke the contract. Yeah.
But the assets are still the book, and the book belongs to somebody else because of the contract.
Well, I broke that and she knows it and she could sue me, but
Okay,
she
she never,
couldn't get
okay,
anything.
she never,
So I have all the content and I did have the copyrights.
okay.
Okay. I had the copyrights, I had the cover. So frankly, there were things she put in there and she gets the final say. That's another thing, is like they have what's called final edit. They have the last decision. Okay. So they can talk to me about things. But if I say A and she says B, well, eventually it's going to be B. She's a publisher. She's investing her money in this. She didn't give me any kind of advance or anything, so there wasn't that. Okay. So yeah, she had a bunch of books that she could go sell, but I had my rights and I went and republished it after finding out about self-publishing. And it was coming out of its infancy and the quality was getting better. And a lot of people, what happened is from the big publishing houses, they were merging and downsizing and going out of business and flooding into the freelance marketplace of self-publishing. So we have all these professionals that can help us professionally self-publish a book. So I found those people and I learned a lot more lessons, all the pitfalls, and I eventually republished my book under my own publishing name. And I'll tell you what, that publisher is now nowhere to be found, out of business. So, as my mother says, boy, don't F with you. You'll put them out of business and take over the industry, which has essentially happened. So that's a big mystery, is what happened to that publishing company. But yeah, so I republished my book and then started, this is the very beginning, right? This is like 2009, 10, 11, 12, and very beginning of self-publishing. And all these people kept calling me saying, I understand you figured out how to do this. Can you help me? Yeah, meet me at the Panera. Yeah, meet me at the Panera. Yeah, meet me at the... So I'm doing that for 2 years. And now I'm creating charts and graphs and timelines and who to work with, who not to work with. I'm like, yeah, I got a blacklist. Don't worry, you know? Anyway, so I'm figuring that out. And then one day, I'm talking to a friend of mine who did the interior layouts of books. And I said, I'm giving serious thought to starting a company where I manage an author's entire project, but I maintain no ownership. Everything will be in their name. All copyrights, sales rights, distribution rights, foreign rights, digital rights, they get everything, but I manage the project, essentially doing everything a publisher does, but I maintain no ownership. She goes, oh God, you should do that. So the next day, someone calls me, and that was Barbara Oliverio.
Shout
And I
out.
said, what?
We just shouted out to Barbara.
Yeah, we
I
did.
need-
We just shouted
I
out
need
to
to know
Barbara.
who she is. Kind of to put her in the credits.
But I said, yeah, meet me at the Panera. So I met her at the Panera and she says, I understand you can help me self-publish. I said, yeah, I've been doing this now for a couple of years, but I want to start a company where I manage someone's entire project. But I've never done that portion of it before. could you be my first beta test girl? She says, yeah, you bet. So that was November 2012. So it's over 11 years ago. And that book went on to become a movie at the Hallmark Channel. So our very first book became a movie, and that was, well, we call it Love on the Lido Deck because it's a romantic comedy.
That's the name of the book.
That's the name of the book, Love on the Lido Deck.
Okay.
Hallmark Channel changed it to Love at Sea, which was so much better. Okay. And off we went. And I started My Word Publishing with Barbara in November 2012. And we now have 4 publishing coaches and 40 editors and 3 cover designers, 3 layout designers. And we have published upwards of 900 books now, all while maintaining no one's rights at all. So the author maintains all their rights. And we have just, well, about a year and a half ago now, we're submitted into the US Congressional Record for being a new model of publishing that helps protect authors' rights. So we're very proud of that. Yeah. So that's what happens when you get ripped off, by the way.
And this all started with a dream.
You know, it's funny. I'm so glad that I had the guts to go do that walk. How else would I land in the publishing world, which is, you know,
We'll
it
never know.
satisfies everything in me and it's my entire skill set. And I wouldn't have discovered it if I hadn't had the guts to go walk around the world for 5 years and go through a couple of wars and oh damn, another war, turn left. Okay. So
How can we get a copy of your book? Is it still like in print? Is it still available?
oh yeah, yeah.
For those who
It's
are,
on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. So 3 mph miles per hour. In fact, this is one of the lessons I learned. You don't start your book with a number. I mean, I guess unless you're nonfiction how-to or a business book, but 3 miles per hour, The Adventures of One Woman's Walk Around the World. And it's in, I actually did the narration of the audiobook. So that's very funny.
Cool.
So that's fun. So audio, ebook, paperback, all the fun. Yes. And if anyone is considering writing or publishing their own book, please talk to us. Please talk to us.
Well, let's that be a teaser. You're going to come back on the conversation, but Coach's Corner, please. And
Yeah.
we'll talk about how that actually works from your professional expertise. Yes?
Yes, that would be fun. Boy, pity the fool that asked me about publishing. I will stop and talk to anyone in the middle of the road.
Well, with that, Holly, thank you for this conversation on the Question Guy podcast, for allowing all of us some insights into pretty much your life, really. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that the journey. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Keith. That was fun.
For those of you who have been watching and listening, I'll see you next time. Take care.